Every family has secrets, but some are never meant to be discovered, only felt. Felt in the way a house goes quiet the moment you step inside. Felt in the way familiar voices lose their warmth, like they're coming from somewhere deeper than the mouth. I remember the night I realized something was wrong, not because of a sound, or a shadow, or a sudden fear, but because everything felt almost right. My family was there. Their faces, their names, their habits. Yet something invisible had changed, and once I noticed it, I couldn't unnotice it. Conversations ended too quickly. Smiles appeared a fraction of a second too late. When someone said my name, it sounded copied, as if they'd practiced it when they thought I wasn't listening. The house watched us in silence. Every hallway stretched just a little longer than I remembered, every door holding a pause before closing. I began to understand that danger doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it sits at the table with you. And sometimes, the most terrifying thought isn't that your family might be hiding something. It's the possibility that the people you love are still standing right in front of you, but whatever made them has quietly slipped away. The house itself was ordinary. That was the first thing everyone agreed on. A quiet street where nothing ever seemed to happen, lawns trimmed short, porch lights coming on at the same time every evening. From the outside, it looked like safety, like routine, like the kind of place where memories were supposed to stay gentle. Inside, life followed patterns so familiar we stopped thinking about them. Mornings meant soft footsteps in the hallway, the smell of food drifting from the kitchen, voices layered over one another in easy conversation. Evenings meant shared meals, plates clinking, chairs scraping the floor, the same seats taken without anyone needing to ask. At night, doors were checked, lights were turned off in the same order, and good night was spoken the same way it always had been. When I remember those days now, they come back in pieces. My version isn't the same as theirs. My mother remembered the calm, how the house felt full, how everyone was always home on time. My father remembered the quiet, how peaceful the neighborhood was, how nothing ever interrupted our routines. One of us remembered the laughter at the table, another remembered the sound of the television playing softly after dinner. We all remembered feeling safe. We all remembered believing that nothing could touch us there. The walls were lined with family photos. Birthdays. Holidays. Faces frozen in moments that were supposed to last forever. But even then, some of the images never felt right when you looked at them too long. Smiles blurred at the edges. Eyes caught mid-blink. Expressions that didn't quite match the moment they were taken. We passed them every day without stopping, without questioning why we avoided meeting their gaze for too long. Bedtime was always the same. Lights dimmed low, voices softened, the house settling into what we thought was sleep. Parents checked on us. Doors were left slightly open. The sound of footsteps faded down the hall, followed by silence that felt thick, almost heavy. Comfort lived in repetition, and repetition told us everything was fine. That's what routines are for, to keep questions away. But there was a moment, early on, when one of us noticed something small. So small it didn't seem worth mentioning. A pause where there shouldn't have been one. A voice answering just a little too late. A look that lingered too long before turning away. It wasn't fear. Not yet. It was confusion. And confusion is easy to ignore when everything else looks normal. So no one said anything. We kept eating together. We kept smiling for the photos. We kept saying goodnight and trusting the darkness to behave the way it always had. Each of us noticed different things, at different times, but the house remained quiet, the neighborhood unchanged, the routines untouched. And that made it easier to believe that whatever felt off was just in our heads. After all, this was our home. And homes don't change. People do. It started at night, the way these things always seem to. When the house was supposed to be asleep, when the walls should have been empty of movement and the air free of voices. I was lying still, listening to the familiar sounds, the soft ticking of the clock down the hall, the distant hum of the house settling into itself. That rhythm had always been comforting, predictable, until something interrupted it. There was a sound, not loud, not sudden, just out of place. A single creak, slow and deliberate, as if someone had shifted their weight on the floor outside my room. I waited for the follow-up. Footsteps. A voice. Anything. But nothing came. The silence that followed felt heavier than the sound itself, pressing in until I became aware of my own breathing. I told myself it was normal. Old houses make noise. That's what we'd always said. The next morning, one of the doors was open. Not wide. Just enough to notice. The lock hadn't been forced. The frame wasn't damaged. It was simply open. I remember standing there longer than necessary, staring at the gap, trying to remember if I'd checked it the night before. I always checked it. We all did. No one said anything. The door was closed again. The day moved on. That night, it happened again. The ticking. The quiet. Then my name. It was barely a sound at all, more like a breath shaped into something familiar. Soft. Close. Close enough that I felt it more than I heard it. I didn't answer. I didn't move. I watched the wall beside my bed as a shadow slid across it, slow and stretched, like someone passing by just outside my door. When it was gone, the house returned to its quiet, as if nothing had happened at all. I thought I was imagining it. Another voice remembers now. I told myself I was half asleep, that my mind was filling in gaps. I didn't want to wake anyone. I didn't want to be the one who made it real. Every night after that, the clock stopped at the same time. No matter when we looked at it, the hands never moved past it. The ticking continued, steady and soft, but time itself seemed unwilling to go any further. And beneath it all, so low it almost blended into the air, there were whispers. Never clear. Never complete. Just enough to make us listen. We didn't talk about it. We didn't compare notes. We chose silence because silence felt safer. And if you've ever felt that instinct, to turn away, to pretend you didn't hear something you know you did, then you understand why we stayed quiet. Because sometimes, not knowing feels like protection. And asking questions feels like an invitation. After that, the house stopped treating us the same. What happened next didn't arrive all at once. It came in pieces, tailored to each of us, as if whatever had entered our home understood exactly how to stay hidden. My mother was the first to withdraw. She began avoiding mirrors, walking past them without looking, covering one in the hallway with a scarf she said didn't match the room anymore. When asked, she laughed it off, but her eyes never lifted. She said reflections felt delayed, like they were deciding whether to follow her movements or not. My father started leaving lights on. At first, we assumed he'd forgotten. Then the lights began turning on by themselves. Rooms no one had entered glowing softly in the middle of the night. He would stand in doorways, staring at the brightness, jaw tight, hand still on the switch as if unsure whether touching it would make things worse. He stopped sleeping through the night. None of us did. As for me, I began noticing spaces. Empty ones. Hallways that felt longer after dark. Corners that seemed to wait for attention. Bedroom doors were never fully closed anymore, always left open just enough to watch from the inside out. Or from the outside in. I couldn't tell which felt more unsettling. Each of us experienced something different, and that made it easier to stay apart. Harder to explain. Fear has a way of isolating people, even when they live under the same roof. We stopped asking questions. We stopped sharing details. When someone went quiet at the table, no one pressed them. Silence became another routine, folded neatly into our days. The house filled with small sounds, breath where no one stood, movement without direction. At night, the air felt thick, as if the walls themselves were listening. A low vibration settled beneath everything, subtle but constant, like something deep within the house had begun to hum. When I lay awake, I could hear breathing that didn't match my own, slow and measured, just at the edge of hearing. We avoided one another's eyes. Avoided mirrors. Avoided the truth forming between us. Because admitting it out loud would mean we were no longer alone with our fear, and somehow, that felt worse. Until one night. No whispers. No single shadow. No distant sound meant for just one of us. We were all awake. We were all listening. And from somewhere inside the house, something made itself known. Together. The sound that finally pulled us together wasn't subtle. It wasn't easy to explain away. It was loud enough to break routine, loud enough to demand witnesses. A heavy impact somewhere deep in the house, followed by the unmistakable feeling that something had shifted. Doors opened. Lights flicked on. Footsteps moved quickly, urgently, down the hallway we'd all been avoiding. We gathered without speaking, drawn into the same space like instinct had taken over where words had failed. The house felt different with all of us standing there. Smaller. Tighter. The air pressed close, and the low hum we'd grown used to seemed louder now, vibrating through the floor, through our chests. The lights flickered overhead, once. Twice. Then rapidly, as if struggling to decide whether to stay on at all. When they stopped, the brightness felt fragile, temporary. At the far end of the hallway, just beyond where the light reached, something moved. Not fully into view. Never fully revealed. A shape passed through darkness, slow and deliberate, as if it knew exactly how far it needed to go to be seen without being understood. The shadow paused there, stretched long across the floor, unmoving. Watching. No one screamed. No one ran. Fear held us in place, heavy and absolute. Then one voice broke the stillness. Quiet. Shaken. It knew our names. No one asked how. No one needed to. We all understood in that moment that whatever had been whispering in the dark, whatever had been walking our halls and standing just outside our doors, had never been lost. It had been paying attention, learning, waiting. The lights cut out. For a moment, there was nothing but darkness and the sound of our breathing, uneven, shallow, too loud. Then silence. True silence. The kind that feels intentional. When the lights came back, the hallway was empty. After that night, everything stopped. No whispers. No shadows. The clock began moving again. Doors stayed closed. Lights remained where we left them. Morning came, pale and quiet, filling the house as if nothing had ever happened there. We went on with our lives. We laughed again. We moved forward. And we never spoke of it. Not once. Not as a family. Not alone. We acted as though silence could erase memory, as though naming it might invite it back. Time passed. Distance grew. The house was left behind. But some things don't stay in the places where they began.